right. Hey, everyone. Here we are in episode 7 of Slice of Life Sciences. I'm excited to have Kori Rahaim joining me today. Kori, I hope I said your last name right. Kori is the VP and head of people at 5AM Ventures and 459 NewCo, which is a 5AM Ventures company. So, Kori, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. I appreciate it. I thought, given how competitive the life science industry is in hiring in Boston, but just in general, today's conversation would make for a really interesting chance to hear about your experiences, what's keeping you busy today, and just what led you to where you are today, given your career path. So does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, why don't we just kick things off by just learning a little bit about you? Then we'll dive in. So have you always worked in biotech, or what led you to get an opportunity, your first opportunity in the life science world?
Yeah, I've always worked in life sciences. Early in my career, I actually worked at a company that made dental implants, oddly enough, which was considered a medical device. So we had FDA and regulatory requirements for our product. And in short, what we did is manufacture and create, a product that would help restore someone's confidence and their smile. So I got to see a lot of patient stories from younger folks to seniors. Teeth are actually really important. So it was a niche field and got to see a lot. And during my time there, the reason I joined was because of the VP of HR, who ended up being someone who really connected with during the interview. It'll be a theme in my career. I've always joined companies because of specific people and they've helped mentor me. So that person did exactly that. I ended up earning a few rounds of promotions and really kind of dived into the world of HR as my first official job after graduating from undergrad. And then in terms of kind of next pivots, I ended up going to Novartis, wanted to go to a global place where I could see even broader impact for patients outside of the dental field. So I got to see, really, what an enterprise and kind of global force biopharma can be. I took the job at Novartis, not just because of that, but really because of the person who recruited me. So my first manager really was someone who role modeled and taught me about what servant leadership could be. So really supportive. The development was always in mind. And again, had a lot of fun and learned a lot along the way, at being in those two places. So in short, I've always been in, organizations that have had a connection to patients.
And having relationships helps you join one of those companies with someone in particular. So that's interesting. At Novartis, I know you oversaw the HR function for a couple research organizations and served on the leadership team. Just in general, high level, what were some of the program initiatives that you put in place that kind of started building leadership skills across the organizations?
Yeah, I'd say looking back, the initiatives I'm most proud of are really the ones we took with career development. In the neuroscience group in particular, one of our results ended up being putting tools and frameworks in place. So basically every single person in the organization would have had what we call the quality career conversation with their manager. And by quality, I meant one where there'd be actually a dialogue and both sides of would come prepared for the conversation. And there were some concrete steps planned afterwards. So I think so often when we think about career development, it can be a checkbox exercise. Let's do a training. Let's just, say we've done this. But we made sure to really clarify what it would look like. And then related to this, the other thing I'm really proud of is just using the power of storytelling to help really inspire and motivate other teams about what career development is. So what we did is, in practice, put together some really great panels of scientists at various levels and had them share their career stories. So it's like so often I think people feel the pressure to move up the career ladder or into management, even when their heart may not be in it. But when we had a scientist talk about their job shadow in business development and strategic alliances, or a leadership team member talk candidly about how they've also questioned, what their next move would be, there's a lot of power in that vulnerability. So I think those are some things that, again, just kind of opening up those conversations and in a really, simple way, there's a lot of impact there.
Yeah. And you were there for what, 5 years or so at Novartis?
Just about, yeah.
So after Novartis, I know I always find this interesting that you became an early employee at a much earlier stage company, but growing quite rapidly in Relay Therapeutics. Out of curiosity, I assume it was much different in a lot of ways than a large pharma like Novartis. But what motivated the transition, and I assume maybe a relationship came into place, but I guess what were some of the things you learned being the head of talent acquisitions when you started at Relay versus your current or previous role at Novartis?
Yeah, I'd say it was so different, and just like every role I've taken, there was a couple folks that were behind my move. I will admit, the first time they asked me, my answer was like, "No, I'm pretty happily employed at Novartis." And then I remember kind of thinking back over, I think it was like Thanksgiving time, and just really reflecting on, a startup and how I wanted to spend my time. So I guess, long story short, I did some soul searching, and I went to lunch with some folks at the time just to kind of explore, and then I got to meet the CEO who's still leading Relay today. And honestly, it was really a big the CEO Sanjeev Patel was a big part of why I wanted to join, because the way he talked about people in HR, and how he really saw our function as a partner to helping really leverage the organization, build teams, and it wasn't just a transactional type of role. That really resonated with me. It felt very different, and I could also sense that I'd have some creative freedom, which is also very exciting after coming from a big place. So those kind of all those things fell into place, and when I joined, I ended up having a ton of runway in terms of being able to build and do some fun stuff. From creating a really differentiated candidate experience. In the early days, we would, ask this really mysterious question on our job applications. And one of them would be like, "What's your favorite candy bar?" And so when we would actually have someone that came in to interview, in the early days of the company, I would go down to the bodega where I was living, get a Kit Kat, get a Twix, and that would be waiting for someone when they came in. And the reason we did this is because, we were being very stealthy about the targets we were working on. We didn't have a lot to say about the portfolio. We were still preclinical, but what we had was a really amazing team. And so details really mattered. Like, all of this kind of, hung together and resonated with the culture. So the fact that, there was something that personalized for, again, this is very early days of the company, it really wowed some folks. I still got emails and texts, someone flew across the country. They're like, "Man, I reached into my pocket, that Kit Kat you gave us, it was in my pocket on my ride home." Like, that was like a really nice touch. Some of these people obviously didn't end up hiring them, but, for us, every interaction with the candidate, that was an opportunity to build the brand, and everyone, we wanted them to walk away wanting to work there. So that was something that, was easy, makes a recruiter's job very easy when the team is so aligned, and creating that amazing experience. So, I had a lot of fun, just some of the quirky things. I also moonlighted as their social media lead, just because I had an interest, and a lot of creative freedom that probably, like, looking back now that I've kind of been on the other side and seen a company build a few times, I can't believe they gave me that much freedom. But lots of fun, I'd say, in the early days.
Was that kind of the first time you had the ability to challenge typical HR processes and took the reins that way?
I think so. I got to do a little bit of that at Novartis. Novartis is an amazing place. I think the best thing I learned there is just how to treat people, how to be a great leader. The tough part about being in a bigger place is you're usually rolling out someone else's idea or initiative. But yeah, here at Relay, I got to do I would have an idea, like the candy bar thing just came to me. Like, how can we make something personal happen? And really think about every moment and every detail. So I think that was just, I just got kind of addicted to being able to, like, just ideate and quickly, test things out. And even as the company scaled, I was very fortunate to work under a number of great, like, HR leaders. And I remember the last one I had, Andy Porter had mentioned, like, we're just going to experiment, we're going to try things out, some things are going to work, and then we'll just keep iterating. So that mindset has been really helpful, especially in the startup world. Like, you can't wait till something is, fully baked. Like, you have to have a bias to action. And I think that's what I just love about working with these early companies, is because you can be a lot more creative and, do some things that you just normally wouldn't do at more mature places.
Yeah. What's the hardest, I guess, part of working for a company that's scaling so rapidly? I assume you have tons of different hats to wear every single day. So what do you have, just a bunch of day-to-day roles that fall under your actual title? And I guess what's the hardest part to keep up with? We're hiring, we're hiring, we're hiring.
Yeah. I definitely have a variety of roles. That's part of who I am. I just thrive on kind of being able to do something different and switch mindsets and kind of flex. What we have done is build a great team across 459. So, there is a couple folks that work under me, whether they're recruiting or HR ops, to help, get everything done. But just taking a step back, the biggest or the toughest part about being, early stage for anyone, and that's the answer that I give to every candidate, is amplification. So what I mean by that is when something is great, like it's exciting, that first data set, the first time you move into a new space, maybe the first C-suite hire, first whatever, that's all awesome and you feel it. Whereas if that happens to you at a bigger place, it's just, you don't feel as close to it perhaps. And then the hard stuff, first person that leaves the company, first data that really fails, that stuff is really, really hard. But my favorite first is really when you hear, especially when you're working on, drug development, you hear that first patient dose profile, the person who's received your therapy as you become a clinical company. I still kind of get chills thinking about what it felt like when our CMO read that at Relay, when we were able to kind of progress our program. So to me, that's just the most magical part. And I know there's always a ton more work after that, but when your therapy actually can get to someone who needs it, that's why it never gets old. It's just so electrifying.
Yeah, and you just mentioned 459 briefly, but just so to take, I guess, a step back and lead us into what you're doing today. So how'd you get connected to 5 a.m. and 459? And out of curiosity, was taking that early stage experience and the ability to work with multiple companies at once, was that kind of a dream opportunity for everything you just mentioned?
Yeah, I'd say, the way I got connected is been really fortunate to meet a lot of, great folks throughout my career. And I love to pay it forward, to help be generous with my time and nurture the connections. And Deb Palestrant, she's a partner and the head of our incubator here, 459. We worked together at Relay, ended up being reconnected to her last year, and what, ended up being kind of but how do you think about career development? Like, how did you decide what to do next? But before I knew it, she was basically mapping out what would be my dream job, is doing, all the things I love to do across multiple companies. So kind of just having broader impact and going a step early, which I had never done. So I thought I could work at Relay forever, whereas until it was over, and I would be happy to do that. But what ended up happening is getting the job at 5 a.m. was something that I knew I would regret doing. So I just knew it was time for me to leave and start something new.
And for those that don't know, do you want to just give a quick overview of 5 a.m. and then maybe 459 after?
Yeah. So 5 a.m., we're investing in life science companies, really care about having an impact for patients. And 459, rightfully named as early stage. So even earlier than some of the, companies you can see at our portfolio and our website. But what we do is really want to think about, what's something that could really advance a field, reach our goal of impacting patients. Could be technology, a new modality, new therapy, biological, but we really think about, strong scientific foundations and fundamentals. And so that's what our incubator is all about. We help, stand up a company around an idea. My favorite is working with first-time entrepreneurs and founders. I think they are so brilliant, but also a lot of the ones we get to work with have never done it before. So being with them through some of those firsts has been just a privilege and an honor to kind of see them get excited and get on the adventure that is building a company. So.
And for really early stage companies, I imagine the foundational piece of building out a team is obviously super important in the early days. Have you found that you have to put an even larger emphasis on this than previously in your career?
I actually think yes, because when you're hiring the second or third person after your founding team, you're just setting the bar for everything else. So if you're not going to be really deliberate and really clear on the type of culture and type of environment you want to build, if there is that hasn't been even just have some broad strokes on what you're looking for, it's going to be hard. So, yeah, having the team and just how that can really almost make or break, your ability to be successful. Get people rallied around your vision. All of that is just super, it becomes even more important because you're so early.
Yeah, and then the past 2 years, I imagine, this was even more relevant, but how has it been building that culture, especially when a lot of folks are virtual or hybrid at different locations?
Yeah, candidates ask me this question all the time. I point to some of our companies that have been just superstars and like working in this, hybrid environment. And I don't think there really is. Hybrid is just, I think, another word for being remote first. So putting, information that, making it accessible and inclusive and using, tools like Slack and thinking about asynchronous versus synchronous communication. Like all these things are super critical. And we definitely have spent time with our teams and talking about, even just when would you use, an email or a Slack communication, or, should this be a Zoom call or not? Like these sound like very basic questions, but if companies aren't asking themselves these, they're, you're just going to be continuing to operate, pre-pandemic in a post-pandemic world, which is just going to be extremely hard. So, I think in terms of culture, like it sounds silly, but a lot of the culture is virtual, whether it's like, some of the photos or Slack channels we've created for our teams. There's lots of banter. You can always, I can kind of tell what's going on in terms of all of our companies when you kind of jump into each of their workspaces, and you can just see a lot of collaboration happening that way. But we're excited that, I think with restrictions lifting, cases going down, we'll be able to have some more in-person events, which is just so important in early research. So.
Do you? I know 5 a.m. and 4:59 are obviously very hands-on. Do you guys take operating roles for a certain amount of time within a
Yeah,
portfolio company's
yeah,
life cycle? Yeah.
yeah. The thing about 5 a.m., we're working on anywhere from 3 to 6 companies and incubating them. But what that means is, we're not a gigantic machine. So what you'll get is the high touch, like really, support from us. So I'm effectively, helping, build talent across a few different companies. There's always, a partner that's going to be, supporting the C-suite or first-time CEO or founders, from basically could be 6 months to a year before the company raises their A or launches. And then we always put a foundation in place so that, when they need to hire their own version of me or legal or, science or person, like we have that in place. So we support companies from the beginning and then also after they graduate out of our incubator. But yeah, our partners and investment team, super hands-on, even mentoring folks after, the fact, whether it's leaders and just being really generous with their time, because we think that really matters to, the teams and companies that we're building.
So do you typically work with 3 to 6 companies or so at any given time?
Mm-hmm.
With
Yes.
does your role flex with each company, or do you have the same, I guess,
It
type?
does, because they're all in different spaces. Like we have companies that have launched, or started in the last year, or even, are beginning to, will have stuff in the pipeline. So they'll have different needs, and every founding team is different. They'll have their own personality, their own culture. It truly is, not the same. So they'll need different things. You might have a first time entrepreneur who, needs a lot more support, is going to have probably more questions and might lean on us more. There you might be working with, some folks who've done it and they have their Rolodex, and, they might need us for, how can we think about compensation or some other things. We need a lab space. So it just depends. So that's the fun of it. And also very challenging to prioritize, but we get it done. So
I assume this response has no one answer, obviously, but from your experience, what are some of the most successful cultures you've seen and built from an attraction and retaining of talent standpoint? Is there a common denominator?
hmm, yes, I think it has to be aligned with, when the leadership has a vision and they can communicate that where it is in alignment with the rest of the organization. So whether it's, at Relay, and I think one of our seeds now, this thoughtful, deliberate, like really being mindful of like all the little details, is something that matters. And that's how we talk about it in the interview experience. So all the things have to be in harmony. When they're not, then it becomes very difficult to recruit, because the candidates aren't hearing the same messages. Then they come in the door it's not the company that I, had heard about. So I think just the alignment and clear communication is super key. And it's always going to evolve, but there has to be kind of a North Star on what matters. So I think that's something that whatever your, thing or vision or what, the culture is, it just has to be aligned from kind of head to tail through the organization. Otherwise, it's going to be really challenging for many reasons.
I see we're coming up on time, but I guess final question: what excites you most about what you're building and what you have coming up?
Yeah, I'd say just the relationships that we get to build with some of our founding teams. It's super. It's high touch. We get to like I think I mentioned last week, we had some teams that were moving into their new lab space. Just getting to celebrate those milestones with them. And again, we have a lot of the 5 a.m. team in 4:59. We have weekly updates with all, so we get to hear the progress of the company. So just knowing some of the folks and building personal relationships and seeing, them go from basically an idea where you're sitting kind of hearing about something to this is an actual company with a logo and, they're really growing up pretty quickly. That progress is just, really rewarding to see.
That's great. Do you still do the candy bar for potential hires?
Not right. No, we had to
You're
phase
thinking
it
of
out
the
during
new.
COVID. Yeah, but I think there's always something I'm kind of ideating on what we could do next to kind of really push the boundary. So I might revive that one. It's a good idea.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kori. Really enjoyed chatting, and thanks for taking the time to jump on.
Thanks, Dave.